Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to the Fiscal Sponsorship Orientation for New Projects. Good evening. I asked earlier, but I'm just going to reconfirm. Can everyone hear me? Feel free to respond in the question box. Also, I want to make sure you can see everything on the screen. You should see the Fractured Atlas PowerPoint with fiscal sponsorship telling you who I am and what we're here to do. Fantastic. All right, well, without any further ado, we will get started. So I really appreciate you taking the time to attend this webinar. We appreciate having our members go out of their way to learn about our program policies and procedures before they dive headfirst into their fundraising. I understand that this can sometimes be daunting, and so this is a walkthrough of our program manual and our fiscal sponsorship program. If at any time there's an audio issue, please use the chat functionality to message me and I'll see what's happening on our side. That goes the same for any type of visual issue. If you're not seeing something, feel free to let me know. And as I've said, tonight's webinar is being recorded, so you don't necessarily have to feel pressured to jot down copious notes. We'll send you a link to the recording later this week, and you'll be able to share that with anyone you might think would be interested or just as a reference to review. There will also be an opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation, but feel free to chat questions throughout. If it's relevant, I will answer your question as I go. Otherwise, I will save it for later. In the last 12 months, our fiscally sponsored projects have raised $19 million. As you can see that total there. We also currently have over 3,700 active artists and arts organizations who are fiscally sponsored. I'm sure by now you're aware our fiscal sponsorship program extends some of the benefits of our 501c3 status to artists and arts organizations so that they can solicit tax-deductible donations from individuals and institutional funding, which would otherwise only be available to nonprofits. Our over 3,700 artists and arts organizations who are fiscally sponsored are producing either one-off discrete projects like a single film or dance production, or we're sponsoring them for their ongoing artistic activities like a startup theater company or the work in progress of a visual artist. Ultimately, we have the largest fiscal sponsorship program in the nonprofit arts sector. And how many Fractured Atlas staff members administer this program? 6. That is right. We are able to run the largest arts fiscal sponsorship program in the country with a lean staff of 6 individuals, only 3 of whom are dedicated full-time to the program. Here is our dream team. Starting with Nathan Zabidio, he is one of our program specialists. That's Diane DiBasella, she is our program director. That's Teresa Hubbard, another of our program specialists. Samantha Keating at the bottom, a program associate. And that's me up top. I'm Courtney Harge. I'm a program associate here in fiscal sponsorship. And that is Deborah Kwan. She is our member associate, and she will help primarily with any of your member or billing needs. When you give us a call or shoot us an email, you could be working with any one of us at any given time, depending on the nature of your inquiry. To offer a little bit about myself, I am a theater producer and director. And if you excuse me, I'm seeing that there are issues with the slides. Let me see what's happening. I apologize. Forgive the delay. Are people seeing slides now? Ha, there we go. Sorry, I apologize. Thank you all for alerting me that the slides were not showing up. So to go back, I will go in reverse order and show you who we are. So forgive me. I apologize. It is not working the way I would like it to work. There you go. That is us. There you go. Now you all can see the team. So I'm up top in the center in the red box. Going to the left, it's Diane, our program director, Teresa, our program specialist, Amanda at the bottom, program associate. Nathan to the right is our another program specialist, and Deborah Kwan is our member associate. Thank you all for your patience and for letting me know that what the visuals weren't showing. Fantastic. So, as I was saying a little bit about myself, I am a theater producer and director, as well as somebody who works here in fiscal sponsorship, and I am actually fiscally sponsored. I have been working in nonprofits, particularly as a producer and director, and as a fundraiser for the last 6 years at this point. And everybody on our staff is well informed and most of us are practicing artists. So we not only can support you in your administrative capacities, but understand what it takes to make the work happen. The way we're able to run a program of this size so smoothly and efficiently is that we have custom built online tools that mean a large portion of the program is automated. And there's a great deal of functionality at your fingertips that allows you to control a large portion of your fundraising activities. The purpose of today's presentation is to show you a path forward with your fiscal sponsorship program by giving you a tour of what's available for you on our website and to outline some of our program policies and procedures. So once our board of directors approves you for the program, you will be able to log in to our website and access your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. That is what is apparent here. This is your primary portal for interacting with the program. We're going to talk through some of the features of this page as well as the program manual. There's no substitute for hands-on learning, and we can't possibly cover everything in this presentation. So I encourage you to thoroughly explore this page on our website and read through the program manual. It's only 35 pages as your first steps once you're set up with fiscal sponsorship. So one of the first things to understand about our fiscal sponsorship program is that it makes a distinction between earned and contributed revenue. Earned revenue is any revenue received in exchange for an activity or a good or a service. So if people purchase tickets to your performance, that's earned revenue. If people are commissioning you to make work, that is also earned revenue. Contributed revenue or donations is revenue that is received without receiving anything in return. So if somebody donates $100 to your project, they aren't getting any goods or services, they're just giving you $100 to support your work, that is a donation. It has what we like to call donative intent, which means they are giving with no expectation. Earned revenue, so things like ticket sales, merchandise sales, the things I mentioned, need to be made payable to you directly. We do not process earned revenue for the purposes of our fiscally sponsored projects. We can only accept contributed revenue. We also cannot process private investments or equity. If you've got for-profit investors involved with your project, we can still sponsor you, but that does require a slightly longer conversation with more specific information. If you do have for-profit investors, feel free to send an email to support@fracturedatlas.org and we can talk about the options available to you. We can only, as I said, process contributed revenue for the lifetime of your project, for the duration of your project. And these are funds that have to be charitable donations solicited and processed through our normal process, which we will go through today. So accepting donations, contributed revenue, is something that we can do in 3 different ways. By debit or credit card, on our website or on a crowdfunding campaign on either Indiegogo or Rocket Hub that has been linked to your fiscal sponsorship. Donations that are made by check, payable to Fractured Atlas, and non-cash donations of good made in kind for the charitable purposes of your project. Each of our fiscally sponsored projects has a donation landing page on our website where they can direct donors who want to contribute by debit or credit card. We can accept credit card donations up to $20,000 per transaction. What that means is if you have a donor who would like to donate via credit card in amounts greater than $20,000, they will have to do so over multiple transactions. What you'll have to do is ask them to wait about 5 minutes between their transactions so their system doesn't think it's a duplicate donation made by mistake. I see we have a brief question about non-cash goods. So yes, we do accept non-cash goods or in-kind donations. And I will talk at a little later at greater length about that process. Donors who contribute by credit card are required to provide an email address, and we automatically send them a receipt. You will also have a copy of that receipt that you can access via your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. So if somebody reaches out to you saying they weren't sure that they got their receipt, you can also give it to them. Please note that you are prohibited from collecting credit card information from your donors and entering it into our website on your own. Donors must input their own debit or credit card information or contact Fractured Atlas directly to process the donation over the phone. This opens up some liability issues as you, the sponsored project, are not authorized to use our credit card processor in this way. It's a security measure for both you and your project to make sure that you are not responsible for storing or protecting the privacy, the private credit card information of your donors. Your donation landing page is a public-facing page on our website where you should put content that you want potential donors to see. This can be an image or YouTube video and a brief description of your project or what your current activities are. Sorry about that. So you can edit your sponsored project's online profile on our website through your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Online Profile button. When you submit changes, an automatic email will go to a member of our staff asking for review and approval before it goes live on our website. We typically turn this around in 1 to 2 business days. We'll either approve the changes outright or be in touch with you directly via email if we have any questions about the new material that you're putting up on our site. Because we want to make sure that your activities remain the same as the activities you were originally applied for. So by doing so, by having this review process, we do want to be able to make sure that we are very clear on what you were fundraising for and on what you were approved for. I see we have a question. The question is, why are the donor levels fixed? And I actually need a little bit more clarity around that question. I am going to talk about giving levels a little bit, but I'm not sure what you mean by fixed. So if you could provide a little bit more clarity in the chat box, I can answer that for you. Oh, this is actually a very good question. So to clarify, we will be talking about giving levels in a little bit. But giving levels or donor levels are an option for fiscally sponsored projects to be able to offer mixed income contributions. What that means is they're donations where, let's say, somebody's giving you $100 and you're giving them a CD in exchange valued at about $15. Um, we can allow that type of purchase, or excuse me, that type of donation without by properly designating that $15 of that donation is non-deductible. Um, because of that, they do need to be approved, simply because you are changing the tax deductibility of the donation. So we need to make sure that the giving level accurately represents what is being given and its value. That's why they do have to go through an additional review process, and they can't be edited by the project. We can update them, but we, as in Fractured Atlas staff, can update them, but you, as a fiscally sponsored project, can't update them directly. You just have to email us, and we can work through what needs to happen. And that will happen. We'll do a little bit more talking about that in the donations portion of the when we're talking about the donations portion of my fiscal sponsorship. We can also accept check donations that are made payable to Fractured Atlas. You're welcome to have donors write your name or the name of your sponsored project on the memo line, but this isn't entirely necessary because we ask that your donors mail you their contribution first. Once you receive a donation via check, you can report that check on the My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the donations button. See where the green arrow is pointing to report. This is where you'll create the donor record for check contributions. So this is how we know how to acknowledge properly this donation. You'll provide the donor's name, contact info, and other info available to you from their check before forwarding it on to us for processing and deposit. You'd be surprised at how many unreported checks arrive at our office, which we end up spending a lot of time doing some detective work to figure out which of our fiscally sponsored projects they are designated for. We often have to mail unreported checks back to the donor or back to you, as it's crucial that we receive this information in advance. With over 3,700 projects, that can be a lot of checks to process, and we would much rather send the check back and ensure that it is properly reported than try to guess and improperly report something. So, to recap the process, your donors will send you their check contributions first. You will submit your donation reports to us through our website, and then you will mail the checks to us for processing and deposit. You will be sent an email confirmation once the donation is processed with a copy of the receipt to forward on to your donor for thanks. We can accept check donations of any size, but those of $1,000 or more require an extra piece of documentation called the Major Gift Letter. The Major Gift Letter is a simple form letter that's available for you to download from your My Fiscal Sponsorship page for your donor to complete and sign. You're able to upload the Major Gift Letter as an attachment to the donation report, but it's not required. Feel free to send us the check to process before you receive the Major Gift Letter if you aren't able to obtain both at the same time. We're happy to process reported checks of $1,000 or more without a Major Gift Letter, but the donated funds will not be made available to you until we are in receipt of the signed and completed letter. As a nonprofit, we need to submit ourselves to an audit, and this is something our auditors require to ensure donative intent and to verify that these funds are being processed correctly. So this is something that we do insist upon, and we will frequently. We are able to contact a donor, or we will follow up with you about getting this done. Things we cannot accept. We cannot accept cash. In order for us to be able to issue a tax receipt, we need to be able to directly link the money back to a specific individual or entity. Credit card transaction or a check with the donor's bank account and routing numbers on it provide us with exactly that direct link. We also can't accept cannot accept money orders for the same reasons. You are welcome to accept cash or money orders directly from donors who do not want their contributions to be tax deductible. If, however, they want a tax receipt, they instruct them to contribute via debit or credit card on our website or by check made payable to Fractured Atlas. We do have a question. The question is, do we need that major gift letter for checks only, or do you also need it for credit cards? We only need it for checks, partially because the credit card, because they are required to enter in their own information, have their contact information and their email address to submit a credit card donation. That is the donor consciously making a decision to donate in this amount, and so we can verify that the donor intended to make that contribution at that level. With checks, the major gift letter is an extra level of security that ensures donative intent and ensures that the donor knows the amount and is committing to offer these funds. The next question is if you are required to report donations if the donor does not want it to be tax deductible. You do not have to tell us about funds that we are not processing. So earned income, you don't have to process, or if someone is just giving you cash, you do not have to let us know about that. There are definitely still tax implications about receiving money in that way. However, that is between you and your accountant. We only need to be informed of funds that require a 501c3 tax exempt organization. So anything that's considered a donation, if there's anyone who wants a tax donation or a tax deduction, if they would like an officially acknowledged receipt, then that has to be reported through us and is thus subject through our fees. Additional question? The question is, does the major gift letter have to be included in a formal letter requesting funds? You do not have to include your major gift letter when you are requesting it from the donor. However, it is best practice to do so, just because people who would like to support your work would like to know the simplest way to do so. So the clearer you can be saying up front, saying, in order to donate at this level, I would also just need you to fill out this form. It can reduce the amount of back and forth and additional hassle after they've given the check. So it is not a requirement that you send your major gift letter format to your donors ahead of time, but it can be very helpful. And it in some ways can help support the conversation around fiscal sponsorship and feeling like in some ways it legitimizes your project. The question I have is that can the letter be made available via link for the ask? The letter is only available via download once you are logged in via the My Fiscal Sponsorship page. However, it is a PDF, so you are welcome to attach the PDF to your initial ask, or you're able to maybe put it in a link in Dropbox or something and offer that customized link to your donors. But we don't give donors access to the My Fiscal Sponsorship page. The only way the only person who has access or people who have access to the My Fiscal Sponsorship page are the authorized members on the membership. All right. So that is the things we can't accept. We can also accept non-cash or in-kind donations. These donations have to be physical, tangible items that exist in the real world and that you can touch, with your hands, the ownership of which is fully donated over to your project. We're going to unpack that a bit further. We can only process donations of physical tangible items, so they have to exist in the real world. That excludes software and other types of digital licenses. Donations of a person's time or services are not considered by the IRS to be a charitable tax-deductible donation. So if a restaurant donates food or beverage to you, they can get a receipt for those items. But if they donate their catering services, they could not get a tax receipt that includes their contributed time. We can, however, accept gift cards or gift certificates from businesses that otherwise sell these items. In order to be tax deductible, non-cash donations need to be fully donated over to the charitable purposes of your sponsored projects. So donations of rent or rental items wouldn't count. If someone gives you equipment for free that they would normally charge a rental fee for, and you need to return the items when you're done, that's more of a loan. Similarly, donated space doesn't count as tax deductible, as you're only being given a partial interest in the property. Um, this is really to ensure that people don't try to take tax deductions for things that are greater than the actual value of the item. If someone is donating an hour of time to you in their $100,000 house, but they are saying that an hour of time is in fact valued at $1 million, what you're getting is a negative value, and it means that they can inflate falsely the value of the partial interest. Um, this, like I said, is a means to prevent fraud, and it's a means to make sure that people are donating with full donative intent. Again, that they want to give you something in support of the project, not just necessarily for the tax deduction, but are doing so responsibly and genuinely. Finally, we cannot accept donations of airfare, air miles, or automobiles. This is due to the complex regulations of how these are processed, and we are unable to do that currently. As with check donations, you will need to report non-cash donations on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. Here you will also be able to download the non-cash donation letter, as you can see at the green arrow on the screen. This is another simple form letter for the donor to fill out, where they provide a description and value for the items they are contributing. You can upload the non-cash donation letter to the donation report when you submit it through your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. For non-cash donations valued at $250 or more, we will require a photograph of the donated items. So be sure to take the photograph as soon as you receive the donation, especially if it's donated food and beverage. Please note that we do not put the value of the item on the tax receipt. It is up to the donor to have documentation of the value. Partially because we are not appraisers, we will list in the tax receipt exactly what was given, but we are not going to put that monetary value into the letter. With all donations that we process for the purposes of our fiscally sponsored projects, we deduct an administrative fee to cover the costs of running this program. Our administrative fee pays for our staff time, our website, and things like credit card processing and bank fees. This fee starts at 7%, but as you raise more money, the fee is lowered on check donations. If you raise $150,000 or more over the lifetime of your fiscal sponsorship, the administrative fee on check donations goes down to 6%. At $500,000 or more, it is reduced to 5%. And if you raise $1 million or more, the fee goes down to 4%. We have had projects raise at least that much money over our time with us. The fee remains at 7% for credit card donations as a processing fee that we incur does not change. We also charge a 7% fee on the stated value of donated non-cash items. You can either have us charge this fee to your credit card on file or have us deduct it from your available fund balance. I would also like to point out that due to the processing of our partnership with Indiegogo, um, the donations processed through Indiegogo are assessed 10%. Again, that is due to their processing procedures, but our partnership with Rocket Hub still maintains the standard 7%. You can always check your fund balance on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page here. It lets you know how much money is raised and whether or not it's currently available. We hold all funds for 7 calendar days from date of receipt, so that is why those could be different, where your balance is one amount, but what is available is different. But maybe we're going a bit too fast and should take a step back. Before we even start processing donations, how do we get people to actually consider making a contribution? Well, we ask. This is often the first hurdle that budding arts entrepreneurs encounter. Every day, I talk to artists or art startups who experience an initial discomfort about actually asking people for money. I encourage our fiscally sponsored projects to consider themselves in good company. All nonprofit artistic ventures in the United States require philanthropic support to keep in operation. That goes for the Metropolitan Opera in New York or the Getty Museum in LA. Don't consider it panhandling or begging, consider it an offer. You're offering potential patrons an opportunity to get involved with something bigger than themselves. And with fiscal sponsorship, offering them tax deductibility as well. As soon as you're approved for fiscal sponsorship, we recommend that you send out an appeal asking for people to make a contribution and to let them know that their donation will now be tax deductible. Some different ideas include an email blast, snail mail campaign, newsletter. You can put it on your website. You can host a fundraising event or run a crowdfunding campaign. All of them you should consider at some point and as part of your larger fundraising strategy. I see we have 2 questions. Let's see. Oh, the question is a clarification on the 10% from Indiegogo. The question is it 10% plus our 7%? And the answer is no. It is 10% total. That includes our fee, a PayPal fee, and a fee from Indiegogo. This follow-up question is, what is our individual interface with either Indiegogo or Rocket Hub? Those options are available on the My Fiscal Sponsorship page under Accessorize. So you can make your choice at that point. There's also details in the program manual for how to set those up specifically. I can show you how to get a link to the donation page. That is a question. So how do you access it? And we will be getting a little bit more into that in a moment. So I'll make sure you understand. The other follow-up question is, do you need to choose between Indiegogo or Rocket Hub, or can you just fundraise with us? And either of those options are possible. We'll talk a little bit more about crowdfunding in depth in a few slides, but you can customize how you wish to fundraise based on what you would like to do and where your audience is. Um, I'm actually going to keep this next question about perks on an Indiegogo campaign until we get to crowdfunding, but that does have a fairly easy answer. So if you are looking at launching an individual appeal, we do have an individual appeal template among other fundraising templates available on the My Fiscal Sponsorship page, as you can see. Crafting a letter is more than just plugging your info into a formula and pressing send, so I would strongly encourage you to use this template as a way to kickstart your brainstorming about the letter you intend to send out. But before you send your appeal to potential donors, you should send us a copy for review and approval. All solicitation materials do need to be reviewed by Fractured Atlas staff before they go out. This is to help us help you. It helps you make sure that we are explaining the fiscal sponsorship relationship correctly. It helps to make sure that you are giving the correct instructions, and it also allows you to take advantage of our expertise and make your fundraising appeal, your solicitation letters stronger. You can email your letter at any time to support@fracturedatlas.org. And a good rule of thumb is that anytime you mention Fractured Atlas or tax deductions or fiscal sponsorship, you should run it by us before sending it out. Like I said, we require you to do this for a few reasons. I'm seeing some questions. I will, to the person who is asking about the addendum they had to sign, I will respond to you specifically directly when we get to questions. There's an additional question about turnaround time. And the turnaround time for most of our requests is 1 to 2 business days. For longer requests, things like campaign approvals, um, any type of corporate sponsorship approval, it can be up to 5 business days. And for grant reviews, which we will go through as well, that can be up to 10 business days. You will know what the turnaround time is when somebody receives your request. So it's in your best interest to have another pair of eyes look at what you're about to send. That is one of the reasons why we review all of your solicitation materials. At this point, I've reviewed probably hundreds of donor solicitations, and we all have a pretty good idea of what a successful, well-presented appeal letter looks like. We can offer some tips and tools to effectively maximize your fundraising. We'll also provide feedback where appropriate. We're looking to see that you're correctly representing the fiscal sponsorship arrangement and are properly talking about your project and our relationship. We've also got some standard text that we require you include with your donor solicitation materials. This can be found on page 12 of the program manual. It's a quick 2-sentence paragraph that succinctly summarizes the fiscal sponsorship arrangement. You're welcome to include it as fine print at the bottom of your materials, but it must be there somewhere. We're also looking to see what you're offering donors in exchange for the contributions. For example, advertising space. We want to make sure that you are not advertising fiscal sponsorship. You're not offering advertising in exchange for donations. That is a prohibited activity for fiscally sponsored projects. So you're welcome to recognize your donors, celebrate them even, but you can't offer advertising. And so what's the difference? Advertising, the biggest difference is who is in control of the content. And by that I mean if the donor is saying it needs to be this size and it needs to be in this place and it has to have this content, then they are in control, and that's advertising, and that's not tax deductible. If you say we are going to put your logo on this page with our other donors, it can be that can just be recognition, not advertising. There's a little bit more in-depth explanation in your program manual, but we do want to help you work through the difference. Seeing an additional question. The question is in the standard text, why do we not say that Fractured Atlas is a 501c3? We identify it as a nonprofit art service organization, but this language just more accurately describes what your relationship to Fractured Atlas is, and not exactly what Fractured Atlas not Fractured Atlas's kind of relationship to itself. Or that language about us being a 501c3 is available on our website. Our audit is available, but the standard language does not expressly mention us as a 501c3 at this point. There are several versions of the standard text, and they are available in the program manual that can be used for different situations. But we specifically note that we are a nonprofit arts service organization and that they are tax deductible to donations are tax deductible to the extent permitted by law. So whenever you offer donors rewards of goods or services in exchange for their contribution, this makes their donation partially deductible above and beyond the fair market value of the rewards they were receiving. So like the question we got earlier, where somebody said, what if we are offering tickets in exchange for a donation to an Indiegogo campaign? The value of the ticket is considered not tax deductible. So if somebody, like I said, is donating $75 and they're getting a $25 ticket in exchange, then only the amount of their donation greater than $25 is tax deductible. So $50 would be eligible for tax deduction. We need donations to be at least partially tax deductible for them to process. Otherwise, they are earned income. And like I said earlier, we do not process earned income. You wouldn't be able to offer donor rewards of equal or greater value to the amount they are contributing. Such an exchange no longer becomes contributed revenue and is a purchase, and so you would not be able to offer that. Again, we do these reviews to be able to work through these issues. So if there are any questions you have about it in the moment, feel free to give us a call or email us. So here are our crowdfunding partnerships, Indiegogo and Rocket Hub. This is often the place where this partial deductibility comes into play. We partner with these programs so that you can create campaigns on either of these sites that are linked back to your fiscal sponsorship. That way, we're able to process these donations to your campaign and issue donors tax receipts. If you were to run campaigns on those sites without our partnership, you would not be able to offer the tax deduction. um, Certain as everybody has at this point heard of crowdfunding and these types of campaigns, so I'm sure you know what it is. We encourage our products to run a campaign at least once as part of their overall fundraising strategy. There's also additional webinars about crowdfunding that we offer, so you can get some more in-depth information there. Here is an Indiegogo page. This is a sample campaign, and they're great. Crowdfunding in general is a great opportunity to raise both funds and awareness about your work. You set a deadline and fundraising goal, and often offer different giving levels where you can incentivize donations by rewarding donors for their contributions. These perks are often partially deductible, so we'll be looking for you to provide info related to the fair market value of what you offer your donors in exchange. Before your campaign launches, we'll want to take a look first to provide feedback and make sure your levels take into account the potential partial deductibility. There is a clarifying question that what if there is a partnership with a site that offers tax deduction in itself? For example, something like Hatch Fund. Because we are not an exclusive fiscal sponsor, you are welcome to process donations through one of something like Hatch Fund directly. Those funds would not come through your fiscal sponsorship with us, and they would be directly responsible for handling that tax deduction. Um, if you were to go through them and then try to send those funds through us, one that we wouldn't be able to do that. But if you did, you would actually be double feed. Sometimes we try to work with other places that we are not currently partnered, but that does create additional fees because you would be subject to their fees and to our fees. So to get started crowdfunding, you head to your My Fiscal Sponsorship page and you can click on the Accessorize button up top. Sometimes there's an issue between Indiegogo and Rocket Hub, just because we connect to them through an API. So if you encounter a technical error, just let us know. Send the email or you can give us a call and we can make sure your campaign gets linked and your fiscal sponsorship with us it is processing the donations before it goes live. Like I said earlier, we try to ask for 5 business days to cover and properly review a campaign. Simply use that in your planning. Oftentimes it can be faster, but that is most likely what we do. If you don't wish to run a crowdfunding campaign, or if you want to offer giving levels to your donors on an ongoing basis, you can go directly to giving levels through our site. Go to the My Fiscal sponsorship page, click donations, and then click giving levels. Your donors will then be presented with these options on our website for different giving levels that they can contribute at. And if you want to offer donor rewards, their online debit or credit card donation can be partially tax deductible. As I said earlier, we do have to review each of these giving levels to make sure that what's being offered is not advertising, that it is that the partially deductible donation portion is properly accounted for, and that they are clear for your donors, that so they understand exactly what they are receiving. The question is, can crowdfunding be for community art projects? Crowdfunding can work for any type of project. I like to say that crowdfunding is like a party. It's a big event. What you're doing is are motivating your donors and your community to be excited about what is happening, and so you can build momentum because other people see other people donating, and it gives you an opportunity to talk about your work in a concerted way. What are the major differences between the two crowdfunding sites? The differences are really about personal choice. They are two of the three largest crowdfunding sites in the world, so you can get exceptional functionality from either one. It's mostly about where you feel your donors would be most comfortable going. Indiegogo is slightly larger. It's a little bit more well known, but Rocket Hub I think is easier to use, and can be a bit more responsive. Um, like I said, that crowdfunding is like a party, and the major sites are like venues. So each one has has its own feel, and that can help determine how you would like to have your campaign, but neither is it's mostly personal preference. It's neither is kind of better or worse than the other. So next we're going to talk about applying for grants. So if you've done the crowdfunding campaign, or if you if you decide that you're looking for more institutional funding, grants are a way to do that. Fiscal sponsorship can open the door to institutional funding from foundations or corporations. As with approvals of your individual solicitations and crowdfunding campaigns, we want to be involved when you apply for grants from these sources. Before you start looking at grants, however, you should be aware of our grant eligibility requirement. We have heard from funders that they don't wish to receive applications from projects that have not raised $1,000 in contributed income. So they want to see that you have a donor base of some sort that has been willing to support your project up to this point to the tune of $1,000. Um, Once you've met that, we can either see that in your fund balance, or if you have run a crowdfunding campaign in the last 2 or 3 years, we're happy to look through those links. Or if you have letters from your donors saying that they have supported you up to this point, we are happy to waive that grant eligibility requirement. Once you once you have once you've once we've waived the grant eligibility requirement and you have found a grant that you would like to apply to, you should send us all of your grant materials at least 10 business days or about 2 weeks before the deadline. We need to see your narratives, budgets, any attachments. If it's an online grant form, we do need to see the login information because we want to be able to review and approve the grant. We want to, again, look for the relationship between us as your and you as your fiscal sponsor. We want to make sure that you are fitting the guidelines, and we want to make sure that the that the content of the grant is what you are fiscally sponsored for. I'm seeing some questions, so let me see what we have here. One, just to go back a little bit, we have a question about changing the name of our giving levels. If you have already submitted giving levels and you need to change the names of them, you should email us and we can make that update for you. This question is, what if you're working with a local agency that invites you to apply for a grant and they know of your past donor history from other foundations? If you are invited to apply before you've waived the grant, before we have waived the grant eligibility requirement, you would just have to send via email the invitation you received to apply. This question is in regard to the grant eligibility requirement. Somebody is saying, so for example, let's say I apply to the New York State Council for the Arts. Are we saying that you can't apply for that grant unless you've raised a certain amount of money already? And yes, that is actually what we're saying. We want to see that a project has raised $1,000 at some point in the last 2 or 3 years. We need to make sure, particularly actually NISCA is a great example because they do want to know that there are other monies already applied to a project. So you don't necessarily have that money in hand, but having a previous grant award or an invitation from a funder to apply or um, a, a a letter from your donor, from a donor saying, or a few donors saying that they have contributed, will help us waive that grant eligibility requirement and will allow you to apply for grants. So ideally, yes. The question is just clarifying, can you send information that shows that you have raised $1,000 in support of your projects? And the answer is yes. Just send those to our email at support@fracturedatlas.org. And I will be happy to answer additional questions around this requirement after when we get to questions. So once you have passed the grant eligibility requirement, once we can see that you've raised $1,000 in support of a project, more specifically the current project, but if it has been in the last 2 years for other projects, that is okay too. And we have reviewed your application. We will need to we can give you whatever materials that may be required by the granting organization. So if you need our IRS determination letter or a supplemental or our audit or a budget or any types of things, we will be able to provide them after we've reviewed the grant for you. As the applicant of record, we are technically applying to this grant on your behalf. So for any grant. So we do need to have copies of all the materials. We need to know what is being submitted to the foundation. Then we will generally receive those in any awards or contracts or reports. You are responsible for completing all of your reports and for fulfilling the requirements of any grant you are awarded. And when we go through the grant review process and when you are awarded, we will get more details about how that works. But ultimately, compliance with the grant and the reporting requirements is your responsibility. So now that you've successfully solicited donations and had patrons donate to your fiscally sponsored project, what next? How do you access these funds? Well, first you'll need to send us the info for a checking account so that we can transfer the funds to you through electronic funds transfer. You'll see this under your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Fund Releases button. We strongly recommend that you have an account for your project's finances that is separate from your personal finances. This doesn't need to be a business bank account. It can just be a separate personal checking account. Here's what the electronic funds transfer form looks like. It's pretty simple. You can send us a completed form with a voided check in one of three ways. You can scan or email it to support at fracturedatlas.org. You can fax it to 212-277-8025, or you can snail mail it to us. All of our contact information is available on the website. We need the check and or other forms of acceptable documentation to verify that the information you're providing is an account you own and have access to, and that is necessary for our audit. Again, when you submit this, it is we'll review it with you if you have any questions. I see there is another question. Sorry. This question is, can we be a fiscal sponsor for community arts grants? We can be a fiscal sponsor for any grant that we are eligible for. It's hard to, as funders are able to determine their eligibility requirements, whether or not we're eligible is determined on a case-by-case, grant-by-grant basis. So you would have to let us know which grant you're looking for. There is a different question about being about Fractured Atlas being a registered charity in different states. We are based in New York, but we are a registered charity in all 50 states. However, because funders are allowed to set their own eligibility requirements, some funders do not fund out of state fiscal sponsors. So specifically, the question was about Ohio, and there may be donors or foundations in Ohio who are not willing to fund fiscally sponsored projects through us because we are not based in Ohio. That can be funder by funder, so there is no way to circumvent that. But it can just be what that funder is. There are other funders who will support us or will support your project through us, even if we are not based in their state. There is a question about what was our grant research list, where we, for a fee, would previously offer a short list of grants. However, we are looking to offer a different resource. So feel free to send an email to support@fracturedatlas.org if you have questions about the grant research process, or if there's information you need, as it might be different than it was previously. Um, I see a different question about registering as a nonprofit in a particular state, and I will answer that when we get to the end, just because it's a slightly more involved question. So, sorry, we're going to go back. So once we receive your checking info through the electronic funds transfer, we hold, you'll be able to submit a fund release through our website for the available funds. As I said earlier, we hold all donations for 7 days after we process them. That's to make sure that the check doesn't bounce or the credit card charge is disputed. After 7 days, donated funds are available for you to request, unless we're waiting on a major gift letter for the check, for a check donation of $1,000 or more, again, as I previously discussed. We're happy to hold on to donated funds as long as you need us to, provided that you remain a dues-paying member of Fractured Atlas with an active fiscally sponsored project, and then you release them to you when you have project-related expenses. We do not automatically transfer funds to our projects. As a fiscal sponsor, we need to demonstrate that we maintain a certain degree of discretion and control over how funds raised through our program are used. The fund release request process is a control in place to make sure that fiscally sponsored projects are using the funds in alignment with our charitable mission. When you submit a fund release request, you'll let us know how much you need and how you'll be spending the money using some pretty broad expense category budget line items. So you can say that $1,000 is for public relations and $500 is for space rental. There is an other expense category, but there's a helpful hint. We almost never let anyone use other as an explanation for their expenses. Almost 100% of the time, your expenses will fit into one of the categories provided. One thing that you're not allowed to do is regrant funds raised through our program to another individual or entity with no strings attached. The best use of fiscal sponsorship is to raise money to create an expenditures related to spend, on expenditures related to the art that you're creating or the service you're providing. And this can include paying people a salary or stipend for their time. But you're not able to award grants through fiscal sponsorship funds to other entities. So you can pay people to do work for you, but you can't just award them funds um, uh, uh, as a regrant. For particularly large fund release requests, we do ask for documentation. We reserve the right to ask for documentation for any fund release requests, but we require it for anything $5,000 or more. That includes documentation be receipts, contracts, invoices, purchase orders. If there are things that you are reviewing and looking to purchase in advance, um, we can accept screenshots or things that show what this will cost. This is a protection for you as well as for us, and is a requirement for our auditors. I see a question around us being a Model C fiscal sponsor, and I will answer that at the end when we talk about questions. This is an additional question about using the funds. You have to use the funds in the same calendar year that they were donated. You do not, unless it is a requirement from the grantor. So if you receive a grant and the grantor contract says that you need to use these funds within a year or within a calendar year, then yes, you're required to. But no, you do not have to require, you're not required from us or from Fractured Atlas to spend those funds within a year. Um, Sorry. Um, one of the questions is about fund release documentation. So if you, would you need invoices for a fund request of $500? It may not be required. However, we do reserve the right to ask for documentation for any fund release request. It is only definitely required for anything $5,000 or more. Look, there's a question again about if you only raise part of the money of your goal, and we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. Um, uh, this question: can the donor still declare a donation as a tax deductible even if the funds are not spent in the calendar year? Yes, the donor can still declare a tax deduction even if you have not used those funds in the calendar year, because they have given the funds to a nonprofit organization, Fractured Atlas. So even if you have not requested those funds, we have received those funds, and the donor's tax deductibility is still intact. Here's a question that says, can a grant be for two projects under one fundraiser? Fiscal sponsorship is made only to cover one project or on one scope of projects. So it would really depend on the specific grant and or the specific nature of that project. The requirements, it also depends on the requirements of the funder. There's an additional question about getting your own 501c3 status and leaving Fractured Atlas, and we will cover that one at the end. And I've answered this question about for two projects under one fundraiser. Fantastic. Thank you all for being so engaged and for having such really great questions. I appreciate that we're running a little over, so I'm not going to speed through anything, but I just want to be aware, and so that's why I'm moving some questions to the end of the project. I will also say we are always happy to answer individual questions via email or on the phone during the day, during our standard work hours, which are 9 to 6. And so you can reach us at support@fracturedatlas.org, or you can give us a call at 1-888-692-7878 extension. My extension is 236, but you can reach anybody in fiscal sponsorship. So when you apply for fiscal sponsorship, you're asked to provide a legal entity with a U.S. taxpayer ID. This actually goes to one of the questions about us being a Model C and what your individual tax liability would be. So when you apply, you were asked to provide a legal entity, and it's either an individual's social security number or a business entity with an employee identification number or EIN. We can work with any type of legal entity, individual, sole proprietor, corporation, LLC. There are a lot of options. We ask for this because the funds dispersed through our fiscal sponsorship program are reported as income to that legal entity in the form of a grant. So this is the Model C relationship, a re-granting relationship. So each January, we issue a 1099 MISCs to individual partnerships and or LLCs showing funds dispersed the previous calendar year as other or grant income. That means that the legal entity associated with fiscal sponsorship does still have tax liability for those funds. Corporations are not issued 1099s, but they will still need to report Fractured Atlas income on their tax filings. That said, you should not necessarily have to pay income tax on Fractured Atlas fund releases. Because we only release funds to you when you request it for use for your specific project-related expenses, you should be able to offset the income on your taxes using the expenses that the funds paid for. We strongly recommend that you use an accountant to file and keep careful documentation of your expenditures. We are not accountants, we are not lawyers, so this is not official tax advice, but you should be able to offset the expenses that you've made and with the income that you've received, and you should not have to pay taxes on those funds. An important thing to keep in mind is that your project is a separate business entity from Fractured Atlas. One of the great aspects of this is that you maintain complete ownership over the work that you create. But we do not grant you 501c3 status. Only the IRS can do that. Rather, we are extending some of the benefits of our nonprofit status to the projects that we sponsor. To that extent, we want you to check in with us on a few things, primarily the use of our tax ID. I'm sure if a friend of yours asked for your social security number, you would be curious about why. In the same way, anytime you encounter a situation that requires our tax ID number or our EIN, please let us know so that we can advise on its usage. We're happy to provide sponsorship confirmation letters addressed to specific potential donors or sponsors to help grease the wheels, but we cannot provide a one-size-fits-all confirmation document with our EIN, as we want to be involved each and every time someone is requesting our info. Just email us at support@fracturedatlas.org. We are not able to help you set up a bank account using our EIN. Any account that you create needs to be set up in your own name with your own tax ID. So don't sign up for anything that requires our tax ID without running it by us first. We can also provide a letter to help you obtain nonprofit rates from vendors that offer them. It's ultimately up to the vendor if they will extend you the rate, but most are willing to do so. This is especially helpful with space rentals. If the venue offers a nonprofit rate, we can usually help you get a discount. Again, just shoot us an email and we'll send you a letter. Nonprofit rates do not apply to bulk postage for your mailings. This is something that you would only have access to if you had your own 501c3 status. We're also not able to help you with sales tax exemption because we have to be the purchaser of record. There are a few other reasons why that we cannot make purchases for you. However, we are happy to, again, work with you on a nonprofit rate. final major fiscal sponsorship policy is our annual report. For any fiscally sponsored project that's either processed donations or requested fund releases in a given calendar year, we are going to require that you submit to us an annual report updating us on your activities. The report is due on April 1st, and we will send out 3 reminders starting at the beginning of the year. If you don't complete the report by April 1st, we will freeze your project. But it's relatively simple to unfreeze your fiscal sponsorship. All you need to do is submit the report. You can access your annual report on the My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Info/Reports button. The report is entirely online, so you don't need to prepare a different document, and it has 2 major components. The first is that we ask you to provide a brief narrative description of what you accomplished the previous calendar year. This can be detailed as you'd like, although we'd prefer that you keep it relatively brief so it doesn't take us too long to review. With the narrative, you provide a numerical impact for your work to show how many people were exposed to your work and how many artists participated. We also ask for updated financials. Because we only process contributed revenue for your fiscally sponsored project, we are only aware of income and expenditures relating to the funds that we've handled. So here's an opportunity to tell us about other funds handled separately from the program, where they came from and how they were spent. Also, if you change how funds released through our program were spent, like if you said that $1,000 was going to be used for transportation, but you ended up spending it on utilities, here's your chance to let us know so we can better adjust our own books. The annual report is another important way that we demonstrate the discretion and control over how funds raised through our program are used. But this is also a way for us to collect data about the artists and arts organizations that we serve so that we can better understand your own impact in the nonprofit arts sector in the United States. The more accurately you can provide your data, the more complete is our picture for the kind of business our sponsored projects are able to do in their own communities. I'm going to open up to questions momentarily and get back to any of the questions I said I was going to. But I hope you've gotten a sense for our fiscal sponsorship program, how you can use it, and how much power you have at your fingertips through the online tools available. I would encourage you once again to thoroughly explore your My Fiscal Sponsorship page and our program manual for a more comprehensive overview of all of our program policies and procedures. And before we open up for questions, I'd like to quickly plug Fractured Atlas's other programs and services. First is Artfully, which is a customer relationship management software where you can sell tickets, manage your patrons and your donors, and keep track of the people who are supporting your project. The information for that is available at artful.ly, and you can see some really excellent tools that connect to both ticket sales and your fiscal sponsorship. Space Finder is a resource that matches renters to venues in their areas. It's customizable searching for space. You can look at synced calendars and book directly online, and you can pay directly through your listings. This is available in a variety of cities, and it's an excellent resource to connect your work to new audiences and locations. And finally, our insurance program. We offer a variety of types of insurance for your arts project or business, from equipment insurance to directors and officers insurance to even new insurance just for artists working at Burning Man. We are happy to help support your project be completed in a safe and covered way. So while I'm looking through some of the images, I'm happy to answer your questions. So any new questions, I'm happy to look at. We also have a variety of webinars in the series, so you can see other information. They are offered every Tuesday at 7:30, and you can always email us additional questions at support@fracturedatlas.org if there's anything I haven't answered here. So now I'm going to go through any of the questions I said I was going to come back to. Um, there is a question that I see about the non-participatory investors addendum. And I will say that because those have to be reviewed by our program directors, she's currently out of the office this week. So it may be a delay in hearing back. However, I will make it a point to follow up and see where we are in that process tomorrow. Um, This question is for the registered nonprofit that should Fractured Atlas register, or should that organization register. And if you're our own nonprofit, you should register in whatever state you're in. Fractured Atlas's registration only covers um, our registration, so it's not necessarily transferable. However, if as you were not soliciting donations directly, you may not have to. I would specifically contact your legal counsel and review the requirements of your state to see what is necessary. Um, I believe I answered the Model C questions. So you, as a model, because we are a Model C fiscal sponsor, recipients of these funds are it is considered grant income. So you are responsible for filing your own taxes. You're also responsible for any type of reporting that is necessary based on the type of legal entity you are. And that is a question where your specific requirements are going to be determined individually. So you should contact your lawyer or accountant at that point. This next question is, what happens if we don't raise the amount of money needed to complete the project? Do you return the money to the people who have funded it partially? And the answer is no. As long as those funds are being used in service of the project, even if unfortunately the project is not successful or does not complete, you do not have to return the funds. Donative intent basically states that you are giving these funds in support of the project but are expecting nothing in return. So that does actually extend to the finished project. Things happen, but we do want to make sure that funds are used honestly and are used earnestly in support of the project. So we will make sure that so we will work with you and your donors to see if there is a solution if it comes to that. This question is, if a project is awarded 501c3 status and leaves Fractured Atlas, um, those funds can still be released to you. It really depends on the specific nature of your project and of how many funds, sorry, we're talking about, and how you wish to close out the account. At that point, we would just have a discussion about uh, your obtaining 501c3 status and the termination of the fiscal sponsorship. The question is, can the arts project be divided into phases? Yes, we are not controlling how your project is executed, so it can be divided into phases. It really depends on what you would need to make the project happen. The question is that somebody plans to send an email right away explaining that they are beginning this relationship with Fractured Atlas, but it does not contain an actual ask. The short answer is, if you're mentioning Fractured Atlas, we should see it, even if it's not a specific quote unquote formal ask. Again, it helps us to explain the relationship, and it helps us to make sure that we understand how you are presenting it. Sending an email to support@fracturedatlas.org is the fastest way, and we try to get those responses out within 1 business day. I've answered the question about the phases. Here's a question about when we send a 1099. And the question is the 1099 reporting triggered at the release of funds from Fractured Atlas to the project, or is it triggered by Fractured Atlas receiving the funds? And the answer is, it is released. We send a 1099 that reports all funds released from Fractured Atlas to the project. So if you do not release, and if your fund balance is $10,000, you've received $10,000 in donations, but you have not actually released any of those funds, that you would not get a 1099 at that point. Sometimes people do that to defer the tax liability to a different year. So let's say you're doing all of your fundraising in 2015, but you're not actually spending any of that money until 2016. You are welcome to let the funds sit in your balance with us until 2016. Um, I believe I've answered all of the necessary questions. Is there anything else anybody needs at this point? If not, feel free to send us an email to support@fracturedatlas.org. Thank you all very much. Oh, I do see one more question. One of the questions is, do you need to spend the expenses before asking for the funds from us? And the answer is no. Expenses need to be spent within 90 days of the request, but you can ask for funds before you have spent them. We may need documentation. So again, it might be invoices, it might be purchase orders, but you don't have to only be reimbursed for things. I'm very happy to help. Thank you all so much for sticking with me on this uh, webinar. I'm sorry we've gone a bit over, but again, I'm happy to answer any additional questions. And I will be sending out these materials and a link to the video of the webinar for your review at a later date. So thank you, and I look forward to working with you in fiscal sponsorship. You guys have a wonderful evening, okay?